The fluorescent lights in County General Hospital buzzed like angry insects at 3 in the morning. Rebecca Thompson pressed her forehead against the cold window of the ICU, watching doctors move around her father's bed in careful, practiced motions. His chest rose and fell with the help of machines she couldn't afford. Behind her, curled on plastic chairs that connected in an unforgiving row, her 13-year-old brother Thomas and 9-year-old sister Lily slept with their jackets as blankets. The numbers on the bill in her pocket felt like they were burning through the paper. $47,000. The surgery he needed would add another $60,000. She made $11 an hour at the grocery store. Her father's construction job had no insurance. The math was simple and devastating. Rebecca's legs ached from standing, but she couldn't sit, couldn't rest. Every minute that passed without that surgery was a minute closer to losing him. She'd spent the last week calling every charity, every aid program, every distant relative who might pick up the phone. The answer was always the same. Not enough, not in time, we're sorry but no. Miss Thompson? A nurse approached with tired eyes. The doctor needs to speak with you about your father's status. Rebecca's heart dropped into her stomach. Status meant change. Change at 3 in the morning was never good. She followed the nurse down the hallway, past other rooms where other families faced their own desperate hours. The doctor met her outside her father's room, and his expression told her everything before he spoke. Your father's condition is deteriorating. We need to perform the surgery within the next 48 hours or... He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I don't have the money. The words came out as a whisper. I've tried everything. The doctor's face showed genuine sympathy, but sympathy didn't pay for surgery. I understand. We have a social worker who can help you explore options, but Miss Thompson, I need you to understand the timeline we're working with here. Rebecca nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She turned away before the tears could fall, walking blindly down the corridor until she found herself in an empty waiting area. She sank into a chair and finally let herself break. This was it. This was how it ended. Her father would die because she couldn't save him. Thomas and Lily would lose their dad. They'd lose the apartment next because she couldn't cover rent alone. The family would scatter into foster care or distant relatives who barely knew their names. I'm sorry, Dad, she whispered to the empty room. I tried. I really tried. Excuse me. Rebecca looked up, wiping her eyes quickly. A man stood a few feet away holding a paper coffee cup. He wore faded jeans, scuffed work boots, and a plain gray shirt. His dark hair needed a trim, and his face showed the tan of someone who spent time outdoors. He looked maybe 30, with brown eyes that seemed careful and quiet. I'm sorry to interrupt, he said. His voice was low and steady. I overheard you talking to the doctor. About your father. Rebecca stiffened. Were you listening to my private conversation? I wasn't trying to. He gestured to a chair around the corner. My friend's wife just had a baby. I was sitting there waiting, and the hallway carries sound. I heard enough to understand you're in trouble. I don't need charity. Rebecca stood, ready to walk away. Pride was all she had left. It's not charity. The man took a step closer, and something in his expression made her pause. I have a proposition for you. A business arrangement. At 3 in the morning, in a hospital corridor, with her father dying and her siblings sleeping on plastic chairs, Rebecca should have walked away. Should have told this stranger to leave her alone. But desperation makes people listen to things they would normally ignore. What kind of arrangement? She asked. The man glanced around the empty waiting area and gestured to the chairs. Can we sit? This might sound strange, and I want to explain it properly. Rebecca sat slowly, her body tense and ready to run. The man sat 2 chairs away, giving her space. My name is Charles Winters, he began. I need to get married. Rebecca almost laughed. Is this some kind of joke? No joke. Charles set his coffee cup down and looked at her directly. I need a wife for reasons I'd rather not explain in detail right now. But I need someone genuine. Someone who isn't going to be with me for the wrong reasons. I need someone who needs help as much as I need to solve my problem. You want to marry a stranger? Rebecca shook her head. That's crazy. Yes, Charles agreed. It is. But I'm offering to pay every medical bill your father has. The surgery, the hospital stay, the recovery. Everything. Plus enough money to keep your family stable for the next year while you figure things out. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried. Rebecca's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Why? She managed to ask. Why would you do this? Because I need help too, Charles said simply. I need a wife who sees me as a person, not as a wallet. Someone who married me because we made a deal, Not because they want something from me they won't admit. Someone honest. You don't know anything about me. I know you're here at 3 in the morning trying to save your father. I know you have younger siblings depending on you. I know you're desperate enough to listen to a stranger's strange offer, which means you're brave and practical. Charles leaned forward slightly. I know you're the kind of person who would do anything for family. That's the kind of person I need. Rebecca's mind spun. This was insane. People didn't just marry strangers. This was something from movies, not real life. What would you expect from me? She asked carefully. Partnership, Charles said. Respect. Honesty. A real marriage in terms of commitment and loyalty, but I'm not asking for anything physical until or unless that develops naturally. I'm not looking to force anything. I just need a wife who's with me for clear, honest reasons. And if I say yes? What happens? I pay for your father's surgery today. We get married within the week. You and your siblings move in with me. Your father can recover at our home when he's released. I'll make sure you're all taken care of. Behind them, footsteps echoed in the hallway. A nurse walked past, nodding politely. The moment felt surreal, like Rebecca had stepped into someone else's life. I need to think, she said. Charles nodded and pulled a business card from his pocket. This has my number. But Miss Thompson, I need to be honest with you. Your father doesn't have much time. The doctor said 48 hours. It'll take time to process everything, schedule surgery, handle paperwork. If you're going to say yes, it needs to be soon. He stood and looked down at her with those careful, quiet eyes. I'm not a bad person. I'm not trying to trap you or hurt you. I'm just someone who needs help, offering to help someone else who needs it too. Sometimes life puts people in impossible situations, and sometimes two impossible situations can solve each other. Charles walked away, leaving Rebecca alone in the waiting area with a business card in her shaking hand. She looked at the card. Simple black text on white background. Charles Winters. A phone number. Nothing else. Down the hall, her father was dying. In the chairs around the corner, her siblings slept because they were too young to stay awake through fear. On her phone, 17 missed calls from the landlord about late rent. Rebecca pulled out her phone and stared at the number on the card. This was crazy. This was dangerous. This was wrong in every way society said things should work. But her father needed surgery in 48 hours, and she had exactly $11 in her bank account. Have you ever had to choose between impossible and unthinkable? Between losing everything you love and taking a leap into complete unknown? Rebecca's about to make a choice that will change her life forever, but is she making the right one? Drop a comment below telling me what you would do in her situation, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next in this story. She dialed the number. Charles answered on the second ring. Hello. It's Rebecca Thompson. From the hospital. Pause. Are you calling to say yes? Rebecca closed her eyes. Saw her father's face. Heard Lily asking when Daddy would come home. Felt Thomas trying to be brave when he was just a scared kid. I'm saying yes, she whispered. I'll marry you. Okay. Charles's voice remained steady. I'll be back at the hospital in an hour with paperwork. Tell your father's doctor that the surgery is approved. All bills go to me. Just like that. Just like that. She heard him moving, keys jingling. Miss Thompson? Rebecca? Yes. You're making the right choice. I promise I'm not going to hurt you or your family. This is going to work out. The call ended. Rebecca sat in the plastic chair, staring at her phone, wondering if she'd just saved her family or destroyed what was left of her life. An hour later, Charles returned with a lawyer and a folder of documents. By 4:30 in the morning, Rebecca had signed papers that would pay for her father's surgery and bind her in marriage to a man she'd known for 90 minutes. By 5, her father was being prepped for surgery. By 6, as sunrise painted the hospital windows gold and pink, Rebecca stood in the hallway watching Thomas and Lily wake up to the news that everything would be okay now. She didn't tell them about Charles yet. Didn't explain what she'd done to make this miracle happen. She just held them and let them believe in good luck and answered prayers. The truth would come soon enough. 3 days after the hospital, Rebecca met Charles at a small diner on the edge of town. Her father was out of surgery and recovering well. The doctors said he'd make a full recovery. Thomas and Lily were back in school, believing their sister had somehow convinced the hospital to give them a payment plan. Rebecca slid into the booth across from Charles, who was already halfway through a cup of coffee. Morning light came through the windows, making the diner feel ordinary and safe. Hard to believe she was meeting her future husband. Thank you for meeting me, Charles said. He wore jeans and a blue work shirt, looking like any other guy grabbing breakfast before a job site. "I'm marrying you in 4 days," Rebecca replied. "Seems like I should probably see you again before that." A small smile crossed Charles's face. "Fair point. Did you order?" A waitress appeared and Rebecca ordered coffee and toast. Her stomach was too nervous for anything more. When they were alone again, she folded her hands on the table and looked at Charles directly. "I need to understand what I'm getting into," she said. "You paid for my father's surgery. You're paying for our rent and groceries. The lawyer said you're setting up accounts for my siblings' education. That's not normal stranger behavior." "No," Charles agreed. "It's not." "So explain it to me. Why do you really need a wife? Are you in trouble with the law? Do you owe money to dangerous people? Are you sick?" "None of those things." Charles wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. "The truth is complicated, but I'll try to make it simple. My family has money. A lot of money. And because of that, I've never known if people like me or for what I could give them." Rebecca frowned. "You don't look like someone from a wealthy family. That's intentional." Charles glanced around the diner at the worn booths and faded menus. "I moved to this town 2 years ago to get away from all that. I wanted to live simply. See who I was when nobody knew my last name or my bank account. I worked construction, fixed cars, helped at the community center. Made real friends who just knew me as Charles." "But you're still wealthy." "Yes. And my family keeps trying to pull me back. They want me to run the family business. Marry someone they approve of from their social circle. Live the life they planned for me." Charles met her eyes. "I don't want that life. But they won't stop until I'm settled in a way they can't argue with. A wife and a stable home life. Once I'm married, they'll back off." Rebecca processed this slowly. "So you need a wife to get your family off your back?" "Yes." "Why not marry someone you actually know? Someone you're dating?" "Because everyone I meet in that world wants something from me. They date Charles Winters, heir to a fortune. Not Charles, the guy who fixes cars." He leaned forward. "You didn't know who I was. You needed help and I could provide it. That's honest. That's clear. No hidden agendas or secret expectations." The waitress brought Rebecca's coffee and toast. She doctored the coffee with cream and sugar, buying time to think. "What happens after we're married?" she asked. "Do we have to pretend to be in love? Attend fancy parties? Put on a show for your family?" "No pretending," Charles said firmly. "I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. We'll live quietly. I have a place outside town where we can stay. Your siblings can come with us. Your father too, once he's well enough to leave the hospital. We'll build a life that works for both of us." "And the marriage itself?" "You said nothing physical unless it develops naturally." "I meant that." Charles's expression was serious. "I'm not looking for a roommate or a servant or anything like that. I'm looking for a real partner. Someone I can respect and who respects me. If feelings develop over time, then we'll figure that out together. If they don't, then we'll still have a good partnership based on honesty." Rebecca bit into her toast, chewing slowly. This whole situation was strange, but Charles seemed genuine. He could have chosen anyone, but he'd picked her in her worst moment. And he'd delivered on every promise so far. "Tell me about yourself," Charles said. "Not just the crisis stuff. Who is Rebecca Thompson when things aren't falling apart?" The question caught her off guard. "I don't know. It's been a long time since things weren't falling apart." "Try anyway." Rebecca thought about it. "I used to paint. Watercolors mostly. I was good at it. Won a scholarship to art school before my mom died and I had to stay home to take care of dad and the kids." She shrugged. "I like old movies. The black and white ones where people talked fast and wore fancy clothes. I'm good at math. I can fix a leaking faucet. I make really good pancakes." "Favorite color?" Charles asked. "Blue. Like the sky in summer." She paused. "What about you? Who is Charles when he's not solving family problems?" "I like working with my hands. Building things, fixing things. I read a lot, mostly history and biographies. I'm terrible at cooking, so you'll have to teach me about those pancakes." Charles smiled. "I collect old vinyl records. Blues mostly. I run every morning. I'm good with numbers too, which is probably why my family wants me in the business." They talked for another hour, sharing small details and careful stories. Rebecca learned that Charles was 32, had a degree in business and engineering, and had spent 2 years in this town working normal jobs under a different last name. Charles learned that Rebecca was 26, had dreams of traveling someday, and read to her siblings every night before bed. When the check came, Charles paid cash and left a generous tip. They walked out into the bright morning, and Rebecca felt slightly less terrified about what she'd agreed to. "The wedding is set for Friday at the courthouse," Charles said as they reached her old sedan. 2:00. "You can bring your siblings as witnesses if you'd like. Wear whatever makes you comfortable." "That's it? No fancy ceremony or photographer?" "That's it." Charles pulled keys from his pocket. "This is a practical arrangement, Rebecca. We don't need to pretend it's something else. Once we're married, I'll handle all your family's expenses. Your father's medical care, your rent until we move, everything. You won't have to worry about money." "I'm not used to that," Rebecca admitted. "Not worrying. You'll get used to it." Charles looked at her seriously. "I need you to know something. I'm a good person. I'm not trying to control you or own you. You'll have freedom and safety and the chance to figure out what you want your life to be. All I'm asking for is honesty and partnership." Rebecca nodded slowly. "Okay. I can do that. Then I'll see you Friday at 2. They shook hands like business partners, which was essentially what they were. Rebecca drove back to her apartment, her mind spinning with everything that had just happened. Thomas was home from school doing homework at the kitchen table. "How'd your meeting go?" he asked. Rebecca had told him she was meeting with a financial advisor about Dad's bills. "Not exactly a lie." "Good," she said. "Really good. Everything's going to be okay." Thomas grinned, the worry finally leaving his young face. "I told you it would work out." Rebecca smiled and ruffled his hair, wishing she had his faith in the world. That night, she lay awake in her small bedroom, staring at the ceiling. In 4 days she'd be married. In a week she'd be living somewhere new with a man she barely knew. But her father would live. Her siblings would be safe. The bills would be paid. Sometimes survival meant making choices that didn't make sense to anyone else. Rebecca closed her eyes and hoped she was making the right one. Friday arrived faster than Rebecca expected. She stood in her small bathroom, staring at her reflection and trying to believe this was really happening. The blue dress she'd borrowed from her neighbor hung nicely, simple but pretty. She'd done her hair in soft curls and put on the only good jewelry she owned, small silver earrings her mother had given her years ago. "You look beautiful," Lily said from the doorway. Her sister wore a yellow dress with white flowers, her hair in 2 neat braids. "Thank you, sweetheart." Rebecca turned and hugged her. "You look beautiful too." "Are you nervous?" Lily asked. "About getting married?" Rebecca had told them 3 days ago. Sat them down and explained that she'd met someone who wanted to help them, and in exchange she was going to marry him. Thomas had been suspicious and protective. Lily had been confused but willing to trust. Their father, still in the hospital but recovering, had been harder to convince. "He's a good man," Rebecca had promised her father. "He's not going to hurt us. He's going to help us." Her father had looked at her with tired eyes and said, "You shouldn't have to do this for us." "I want to," Rebecca had replied, and that was partly true. Now, standing in the courthouse lobby with Thomas in his only suit and Lily in her sunny dress, Rebecca watched Charles arrive in clean jeans, a white button-down shirt and a dark blue tie. He carried a small bouquet of white roses. "You look lovely," he said, handing her the flowers. "Thank you. You look nice too." They stood awkwardly for a moment before Thomas cleared his throat. "We should probably go in." The ceremony room was small and plain. A judge waited behind a simple desk. A clerk sat ready to witness. This wasn't the wedding Rebecca had imagined as a little girl, but then again nothing about her life had gone as imagined. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, smiled at them. "Are we ready to begin?" Charles looked at Rebecca. She looked back, searching his face for any sign of doubt or deception. She saw only calm certainty. "Ready," they said together. The ceremony was brief and legal. Traditional vows, exchange of simple gold bands that Charles had brought, signatures on official documents. When the judge pronounced them married, Charles kissed Rebecca's cheek gently, respectfully. "Congratulations," the judge said warmly. "I wish you both happiness." They walked out into the afternoon sunshine as husband and wife. Thomas and Lily flanked them, looking uncertain about what came next. "I have something to show you," Charles said. He led them to the hospital across the street, and Rebecca's heart jumped. "What are we doing here?" she asked. "Your father should know this happened," Charles replied. "And I have something for him." They rode the elevator to the cardiac floor. Rebecca's father was sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had in weeks. His face showed surprise when they all walked in together. "Dad," Rebecca said, taking his hand. "We did it. We're married." Her father looked at Charles with the protective intensity only a father could manage. "Take care of her." "I will," Charles promised. Then he pulled an envelope from his pocket. Sir, I know you're a proud man. I know you don't like accepting help. But I need you to understand something. Your daughter is my wife now. That makes you family. And I take care of family. He handed the envelope to Rebecca's father, who opened it slowly. Inside was a check and a letter. That check covers all your medical expenses, including the next 6 months of follow-up care, Charles explained. The letter is from a cardiac rehabilitation center in the mountains. They specialize in recovery for people who've had your type of surgery. You're enrolled for a 2-month program, all expenses paid. You'll get strong again, and when you're ready, you'll come home to us. Rebecca's father stared at the papers, his eyes filling with tears. Why are you doing this? Because Rebecca loves you, Charles said simply. And because it's the right thing to do. Her father looked at Rebecca. Are you sure about this? About him. Rebecca squeezed her father's hand. I'm sure, Dad. Everything's going to be okay now. They stayed for another hour, talking and laughing more than they had in months. When they left, her father was smiling. In the parking lot, Charles turned to Thomas and Lily. How would you two like to see your new home? Now. Thomas asked. Now. Charles gestured to his truck, parked nearby. It was older but clean and reliable looking. We'll get your things from the apartment tomorrow. Tonight, I want you to see where we'll be living. They piled into the truck, Lily and Thomas in the back seat with their small overnight bags Rebecca had packed. As Charles drove out of town, heading toward the mountains, Rebecca watched her siblings' faces in the side mirror. They looked nervous but excited. How far is it? She asked Charles quietly. About an hour. It's private and quiet. I think you'll like it. The road wound through familiar countryside at first, then into areas Rebecca had never explored. The mountains rose ahead, purple and green in the afternoon light. Charles drove with easy confidence, one hand on the wheel, relaxed and calm. Tell me something, Rebecca said. Something real about you that I don't know yet. Charles thought for a moment. When I was 8, I broke my arm falling out of a tree. My parents were at a business meeting in another state. The housekeeper took me to the hospital, and I remember thinking how strange it was that strangers were kinder to me than my own family. That's when I first understood that money doesn't mean people care. Rebecca absorbed this. That's sad. It taught me what matters. Charles glanced at her. Your turn. Tell me something real. When my mom died, I was 21. I had already deferred art school once because she was sick. After the funeral, I got the acceptance letter for the next semester. Full scholarship, everything ready. But Dad was grieving and Thomas was only 8 and Lily was 4. I couldn't leave them. Rebecca looked out the window. Sometimes I wonder who I would have been if I'd gone. You still can, Charles said. When you're ready. When the kids are older. That dream doesn't have to be gone forever. Rebecca looked at him, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. In the back seat, Lily asked, Are we almost there? Almost, Charles replied, smiling at her in the mirror. Just a little further. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Rebecca felt something shift inside her chest. Not love, not yet. But maybe the beginning of trust. Maybe this strange arrangement could actually work. Maybe she'd made the right choice after all. The truck climbed higher into the mountains, following a 2-lane highway that curved through pine forests and past small towns Rebecca had never visited. Thomas and Lily had stopped asking how much longer and were now pressed against the windows, watching the landscape change from familiar flatlands to dramatic peaks. Look at that house, Lily breathed, pointing to a cabin perched on a hillside. It's so tiny. Some people like living small, Charles said from the driver's seat. Easier to take care of and you get amazing views. Rebecca watched him as he drove. He seemed more relaxed out here away from town. His shoulders had lost some of their tension, and he occasionally hummed along to the old country music playing softly on the radio. Do you miss it? She asked. The life you left behind? Charles considered this. I miss some people. My younger sister, Elena. She understood why I left. She calls me sometimes just to talk. He downshifted as the road grew steeper. But I don't miss the pressure. The constant feeling that everyone wanted something from me. The parties where people smiled at your face while planning how to use you. That sounds lonely. It was. Charles glanced at her. This past 2 years have been the first time I felt like myself. Working construction, helping neighbors fix their roofs, grabbing coffee at the diner. Normal things. Good things. They passed through a town called Riverside, just a cluster of buildings around a crossroads. Charles waved at an old man sitting outside a gas station who waved back enthusiastically. Friend of yours? Rebecca asked. That's Pete. He taught me how to fix carburetors. Charles smiled at the memory. Spent 3 Saturdays in his garage covered in grease learning how engines work. His wife made us sandwiches and sweet tea. Best Saturdays I've had in years. Rebecca tried to picture the man next to her covered in grease, learning from a local mechanic. It didn't match the image of someone from a wealthy family, but that seemed to be the point. Charles had chosen this life deliberately. Can we stop? Thomas called from the back. I need to use the bathroom. Charles pulled into a small country store with gas pumps out front. Good idea. We can stretch our legs and grab some snacks for the rest of the drive. Inside the store, which smelled like coffee and old wood, a woman behind the counter looked up and broke into a huge smile. Charles Winters. Haven't seen you in weeks. Hi, Martha. Charles gave her a warm hug. Been busy with family stuff. How's your grandson? Growing like a weed. Martha's eyes shifted to Rebecca and the kids with open curiosity. And who's this? This is my wife, Rebecca, Charles said, and Rebecca felt a small jolt at hearing those words out loud. And her brother Thomas and sister Lily. Martha's eyes went wide. Wife. Charles, when did you get married? Today, actually. Charles put his hand on Rebecca's back, a gentle touch. We're heading home now. Well, congratulations. Martha came around the counter to shake Rebecca's hand. This one's a good man. Best customer I ever had. Always polite, always helpful. Fixed my delivery truck last winter when it broke down. Thank you, Rebecca said, warming to the woman's genuine kindness. They bought sodas and chips, and Martha insisted on adding homemade cookies for the road. As they left, she called out, Bring your bride back soon. I want to hear all about how you two met. Back in the truck, Thomas munched on chips and asked, Do you know everyone in this part of the state? Charles laughed. Not everyone. But I've spent 2 years trying to be part of these communities. People around here are good. They help each other. They don't care who your family is or how much money you have. They care if you're decent and reliable. That's how it should be everywhere, Lily said wisely, and Charles nodded in agreement. The sun sank lower, turning the sky deep orange. The road became less traveled, with longer stretches between houses. Rebecca saw deer grazing in a meadow, their white tails flashing as the truck passed. Tell us about where we're going, Thomas said. He'd been quiet for most of the drive, and Rebecca knew he was being protective, watching Charles carefully. It's a valley, Charles explained. Private property that's been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather bought it as a retreat somewhere away from the city. There's a house, some outbuildings, a stream for fishing. Plenty of space to explore. How big is the house? Lily asked. Big enough for all of us to have our own space, Charles said diplomatically. Rebecca caught something in his tone. How big, Charles? He smiled slightly. You'll see soon. They turned onto a smaller road, then an even smaller one. The pavement gave way to gravel and tall pines crowded close on both sides. The truck's headlights cut through the gathering darkness. This feels like a scary movie, Thomas muttered, and Rebecca had to agree. The isolation was striking. But then the trees opened up and Rebecca saw a gate. A simple metal gate across the road with a keypad on a post. Charles stopped the truck and entered a code. The gate swung open smoothly. Security? Rebecca asked. Privacy, Charles corrected. The valley is big, but it's all private land. The gate keeps out hunters and hikers who might wander in by mistake. They drove through and the gate closed behind them. The gravel road continued winding through the forest. Lily had fallen asleep on Thomas's shoulder, and Thomas himself was fighting to keep his eyes open. Long day, Charles observed, looking at them in the mirror. Long week, Rebecca replied. She felt exhausted too, the emotional weight of everything finally catching up with her. We're almost there, Charles said softly. Just around the next ridge. The truck climbed one more hill and at the top, Charles stopped. Rebecca looked out at the valley spreading below them, and her breath caught in her throat. Even in the fading light, she could see it was beautiful. A wide valley with a stream cutting through the middle, reflecting the last rays of sunset. Meadows and forest in perfect balance. And in the center, where the trees opened up near the stream, lights glowed warmly. But these weren't the lights of a simple cabin or modest house. These were the lights of an estate. A massive house sprawled across the valley floor, 3 stories of stone and timber with wings extending in both directions. Warm light poured from dozens of windows. Landscaped gardens surrounded it, and even from this distance, Rebecca could see the fountain in the front courtyard. She turned to Charles slowly. You said big enough for all of us. I did say that, Charles agreed, looking sheepish. I might have understated things a bit. That's not a house, Thomas said, now wide awake and staring. That's a palace. It's home, Charles said simply. He put the truck in gear and started down into the valley. Welcome to Winter's End. Rebecca couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was seeing. This wasn't a modest retreat. This was wealth on a scale she'd only seen in magazines and movies. And she'd just married the man who owned it. As they drove down into the valley, toward the glowing mansion that waited below, Rebecca realized that everything she thought she understood about Charles Winters and their arrangement had just changed completely. The question was, had it changed for better or worse? The truck's tires crunched on a gravel driveway that circled around the fountain Rebecca had seen from above. Up close, the estate was even more overwhelming. The stone walls looked solid and permanent, built to last generations. The timber beams were thick and beautiful, clearly expensive craftsmanship. Flower beds lined the walkways, and even in the evening darkness, Rebecca could see they were meticulously maintained. Thomas let out a low whistle. This is where we're living? Charles parked near the front entrance, a massive wooden door with iron fixtures. This is it. Lily was pressed against the window, eyes wide. It's like a castle. Not quite, Charles said with a small smile. Castles have moats and drawbridges. We just have good security and a nice stream. Rebecca hadn't moved. Her hands gripped the edge of her seat as she stared at the mansion. You said you lived simply. I do, Charles replied. I've been living in a small house in town for 2 years, remember? But this is the family property. I inherited it when my grandfather passed. It's been here waiting. Why didn't you tell me? Rebecca's voice came out sharper than she intended. Why let me think we'd be living in some normal house? Charles turned to face her fully. Because if I'd told you about this before the wedding, would you have believed my reasons for needing a wife? Or would you have thought I was just another rich man playing games? Rebecca wanted to argue, but he had a point. If he'd shown her this first, she would have run. The front door opened and a woman in her 60s stepped out. She wore simple clothes, jeans and a sweater, with gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her face lit up when she saw Charles. There you are, she called, walking toward the truck. I was beginning to worry. Charles got out and gave the woman a warm hug. Patricia, this is Rebecca, my wife. And her siblings, Thomas and Lily. Patricia's smile was genuine and welcoming. It's wonderful to meet you all. Welcome to Winter's End. She opened the back door to help Lily out. You must be exhausted from the drive. Let's get you inside and settled. Rebecca climbed out of the truck slowly, still processing everything. The night air was cool and smelled like pine and flowers. Stars blazed overhead, more than she'd ever seen in town. The sound of water running over rocks came from somewhere nearby. Patricia manages the house, Charles explained as they walked toward the entrance. She's been here since I was a kid. Knows this place better than anyone. How long have you been expecting us? Rebecca asked Patricia. Charles called 3 days ago and told me to prepare rooms, Patricia replied, holding the door open. He said you might be bringing family, so I made sure everything was ready. They stepped into an entrance hall that took Rebecca's breath away. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor. Wood floors gleamed with polish. Paintings hung on the walls and a chandelier sparkled overhead. Everything was elegant but warm, lived in rather than museum-like. Holy cow, Thomas breathed. The children's rooms are upstairs, Patricia said, already moving toward the stairs. I thought they'd enjoy the east wing. It gets beautiful morning light, and there's a reading nook with views of the valley. Lily grabbed Rebecca's hand, suddenly shy. Will we all be together? Your rooms are right next to each other, Patricia assured her. And Rebecca's room is just down the hall. You won't be far apart at all. They followed Patricia upstairs, passing more paintings and family photographs that Rebecca wanted to study but couldn't while keeping up. The second-floor hallway was wide and carpeted, with doors leading to various rooms. Patricia opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was bigger than Rebecca's entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, covered in a soft green comforter. A desk sat by the window and a bookshelf lined another wall. Through an open door, Rebecca glimpsed a private bathroom. This is for Thomas, Patricia announced. Lily, yours is right next door. Lily's room was decorated in soft yellows and whites, with a window seat overlooking the valley. Her bed had so many pillows it looked like a cloud. There was a chest at the foot of the bed and a closet bigger than their old bathroom. This is mine, Lily whispered. Really? Really, Charles confirmed. He knelt down to her level. You can decorate it however you like. Change the colors, add posters, whatever makes you happy. Thomas was exploring his room, opening drawers and checking the bathroom. There's a shower big enough for 3 people in here. Rebecca felt overwhelmed. This was too much. Too big, too fancy, too far from anything she understood. Patricia must have sensed her distress because she touched Rebecca's arm gently. Why don't I show you your room? Let the children get settled and you can catch your breath. Rebecca followed Patricia down the hall to another door. Inside was a suite, not just a room. A sitting area with comfortable chairs faced a fireplace. Beyond that, a bedroom with a massive bed and more windows showing the valley below. The bathroom had a soaking tub, a separate shower, and counters made of smooth stone. This is the main suite, Patricia explained. It connects to Charles's room through that door there, but it's locked from your side. He won't come in unless you invite him. Rebecca walked to the windows. Below, she could see the stream catching moonlight, and the dark shapes of forest beyond. It was beautiful and terrifying. This is too much, she said quietly. I know it seems that way, Patricia replied. But Charles is a good man. He's not trying to overwhelm you. He just wants to take care of you and your family. I don't know how to live like this. Rebecca turned to face Patricia. I've spent years worrying about every dollar, making sure there was food for the kids, choosing between electricity and rent. I don't know how to be the kind of person who lives in a place like this. Patricia smiled kindly. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. Charles didn't marry you to change you. He married you because he saw someone genuine and brave. She moved toward the door. Freshen up if you'd like. I'll have some dinner brought up for you and the children. Tomorrow we can talk more about how things work here. After Patricia left, Rebecca sank into one of the chairs by the fireplace. Her reflection stared back at her from a mirror across the room. She looked small and out of place in her borrowed blue dress. A knock came at the connecting door. Charles's voice came through. Rebecca? Can I come in? She thought about saying no. About locking herself in this beautiful room and refusing to deal with any of this. But that wouldn't help anything. Come in, she called. The door opened and Charles stepped through. He'd taken off his tie and rolled up his shirt sleeves. He looked tired but alert. I know this is a lot, he said, staying near the door. I should have prepared you better. You should have told me the truth, Rebecca replied. About all of this. I know. Charles moved closer but kept a respectful distance. I was afraid if I told you about the money and the mansion and everything else, you'd say no. You'd think I was trying to buy you or trap you. And I needed you to understand that my offer was genuine before you saw all this. So you lied. I didn't tell you everything, Charles corrected. There's a difference. I told you I came from money. I told you my family had resources. I just didn't specify how much until you were ready to see it. Rebecca stood up, pacing to the window and back. My kids are sleeping in rooms the size of houses. There's a woman managing this place like it's a hotel. You have a private valley with a security gate. This isn't a normal life, Charles. This is something completely different. I know. Charles ran a hand through his hair. But listen to me. Yes, there's money here. Yes, the house is big. But the life we build doesn't have to be what you're imagining. We don't have to dress up fancy or attend parties or act like rich people. We can live simply here. The kids can run in the valley. You can paint by the stream. I'll work in the gardens and the workshop. We can be normal people in a nice house. There's nothing normal about this. Maybe not, Charles admitted. But it's safe. It's secure. Your father will recover here in comfort. Your siblings will have space to grow and dream. You'll have time to figure out what you want from life. Isn't that worth adapting to? Rebecca looked at him, this man she'd married that morning. He was right, but that didn't make it easier. I need time, she said finally. Time to adjust. Time to understand what this all means. Take all the time you need, Charles replied. I'm not going anywhere and neither are you. We're married, Rebecca. We're partners. We'll figure this out together. He left through the connecting door, closing it softly behind him. Rebecca heard him moving around in his room, getting ready for bed. She looked out at the valley again, at the beautiful, impossible place that was now her home. Downstairs, she heard Thomas and Lily laughing about something. Happy sounds in a safe place. Maybe Charles was right. Maybe this could work. But as Rebecca prepared for her first night in Winter's End, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into a completely different world. And she had no idea how to find her way through it. Rebecca woke to sunlight pouring through windows she'd forgotten to cover. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory flooded back. The wedding, the drive, the mansion. She sat up in the enormous bed and looked around the suite that was now hers. In daylight it was even more impressive. The furniture was antique but well kept. Fresh flowers sat in a vase on the dresser. Through the windows, the valley stretched out in shades of green and gold, the stream sparkling in morning light. A clock on the bedside table showed 8:30. Rebecca couldn't remember the last time she'd slept past 6. She showered in the huge bathroom, using soaps that smelled like lavender and felt more expensive than anything she'd bought herself. Her clothes from yesterday seemed shabby in this elegant space, but they were all she had until they retrieved things from the apartment. Following the smell of coffee and bacon, Rebecca made her way downstairs. The house was even bigger in daylight. She passed a library, a formal dining room, and what looked like an office before finding the kitchen. It was massive but somehow cozy. Patricia stood at the stove, cooking breakfast. Thomas sat at a long wooden table, already halfway through a plate of eggs and bacon. Lily was drinking juice and looking at a book of photographs. "Good morning," Patricia said cheerfully. "Coffee?" "Please," Rebecca replied, sliding onto a bench across from her siblings. "Did you two sleep okay?" "I had my own bathroom," Thomas said around a mouthful of toast. "With heated floors." "Who has heated floors in a bathroom?" "Rich people," Lily answered, not looking up from her book. Patricia was showing me pictures of the valley. "Did you know there's a waterfall?" "Where's Charles?" Rebecca asked Patricia. "Out running. He does 5 miles every morning, rain or shine." Patricia poured coffee into a mug that probably cost more than Rebecca's weekly grocery budget. "He'll be back soon. Said he wanted to show you around the property after breakfast." Rebecca doctored her coffee and accepted a plate of food. Everything tasted perfect, cooked with a skill that came from years of practice. "Patricia," Rebecca said carefully, "how long have you worked here?" 30 years, Patricia replied, starting on a second batch of bacon. "I was hired when Charles's grandfather first built this place. I've watched Charles grow up, summer after summer when the family would visit." "What was he like as a kid?" Patricia smiled at the memory. "Curious. Always taking things apart to see how they worked. He preferred playing in the stream to sitting in the fancy rooms. His parents used to get so frustrated because he'd come in covered in mud." She flipped the bacon. "He was kind too. Always said please and thank you. Never treated the staff like they were less than him." "His parents didn't visit much?" Rebecca asked. "They were busy with business. Charles and his sister Elena spent more time with their grandfather than their parents." Patricia's expression grew sad. "That's part of why Charles is the way he is. He learned early that money doesn't make people happy or good." The back door opened and Charles came in, breathing hard from his run. He wore athletic shorts and a t-shirt dark with sweat. "Morning," he said, grabbing a towel from a hook by the door. "Gross," Lily declared. "You're all sweaty." "That's what happens when you exercise," Charles replied with a grin. "You should try running with me sometime. The valley trails are beautiful." "I'll pass." Charles laughed and headed upstairs to shower. 20 minutes later he returned in jeans and a green shirt, hair still damp. "Ready for the tour?" he asked Rebecca. She wasn't sure she was ready for anything, but she nodded anyway. They walked out the back door onto a stone patio with comfortable outdoor furniture and a grill. Beyond that, a path led down toward the stream. "The property is about 500 acres, Charles explained as they walked. "Most of it is forest and meadow. The stream runs through the center. There's the main house, a guest house, a workshop where I do woodworking, and a stable." "A stable?" Rebecca looked at him. "Do you have horses?" "Two. They're old and gentle. Good for riding if you want to learn." Charles pointed toward a building in the distance. "The workshop is over there. I spend a lot of time there when I need to think." They reached the stream, which was wider than Rebecca had realized. Clear water rushed over smooth rocks, creating a peaceful sound. A wooden bridge crossed to the other side. "This is beautiful," Rebecca admitted. She couldn't help but appreciate the natural beauty, even if she was still uncomfortable with the wealth it represented. "When I inherited this place I thought about selling it," Charles said, sitting on a rock by the water. "Too many memories of lonely summers while my parents worked. But then I realized it didn't have to be what it was. I could make it something different. Somewhere warm and real." Rebecca sat near him, dipping her fingers in the cool water. "Tell me about your family. The real story." Charles picked up a smooth stone and tossed it into the stream. "My grandfather was a smart businessman who built a company from nothing. Made millions in manufacturing and real estate. He wanted his children to take over, but my father was better at spending money than making it. My mother came from old money and never understood what it was like to struggle. He found another stone. They raised me to take over the business someday. Best schools, right connections, proper social training. But they forgot to raise me to be happy. What about your sister? Elena? She's 5 years younger. She saw what that life did to me and chose differently. Went to school for social work. She runs a non-profit helping homeless families in Denver. Charles smiled. My parents hate it. Think she's wasting her education and embarrassing the family name. But you're proud of her. Very. Charles looked at Rebecca. She's the only person in my family who supported my decision to step away. Said I should find what makes me happy instead of what makes them comfortable. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the water. Rebecca thought about her own family, so different from Charles's but with their own complications. My mom used to bring us to a park with a creek, Rebecca said eventually. Before she got sick. We'd spend hours catching minnows and building rock dams. Thomas was just a baby but Lily was around 4. She loved getting her feet wet. Rebecca smiled at the memory. Mom would pack sandwiches and we'd pretend we were explorers discovering new lands. She sounds like she was wonderful. She was. Rebecca swallowed past the lump in her throat. She was a teacher. Elementary school. She loved her students and they loved her. When she got diagnosed with cancer, so many families reached out. But love doesn't pay medical bills. Is that when things got hard? That's when everything fell apart. Rebecca threw her own stone into the water. Dad tried to hold it together, but between work and taking care of Mom and the kids, he was stretched too thin. After Mom died, he just kinda gave up. Worked himself into exhaustion. Stopped taking care of his health. By the time I realized how bad his heart was, it was almost too late. Charles reached over and squeezed her hand gently. But it wasn't too late. He's going to recover. Because of you. Rebecca looked at him seriously. I haven't really said thank you. Not properly. You saved my father's life. You saved my life too, Charles replied. Just in a different way. They walked the rest of the property, Charles pointing out the various features. The guest house was a smaller version of the main house, still bigger than any place Rebecca had lived. The stable housed 2 horses, Daisy and Duke, who came to the fence when they heard voices. The workshop was filled with tools and half-finished projects. I'm making a bookshelf, Charles said, showing her a piece in progress. For Lily. Figured she might like having her own spot for books. Rebecca felt something warm in her chest. That's really kind. She seems like a reader. Charles ran his hand over the smooth wood. I was 2 at her age. Books were friends when I didn't have many real ones. By the time they returned to the house, Rebecca felt like she understood Charles a little better. He wasn't just a wealthy man playing at simple living. He was someone genuinely trying to build a life that meant something beyond money. But understanding didn't erase her discomfort with the situation. That night, after the kids were in bed and the house was quiet, Rebecca stood in her suite looking at the valley below. A soft knock came at the connecting door. Come in, she called. Charles entered, holding 2 mugs. Patricia made hot chocolate. Thought you might want some. They sat by the fireplace, which Charles had lit despite the evening being warm. The flames danced and crackled. What happens now? Rebecca asked. How does this actually work? We take it one day at a time, Charles said. Tomorrow we'll go get your things from the apartment. Get you and the kids settled properly. Then we figure out the next step. Your family. When will they find out? I'll call them tomorrow. Tell them I'm married and settled. That should satisfy their demands for a while. Charles sipped his hot chocolate. Eventually they'll want to meet you. But we can put that off until you're ready. I'm never going to be ready to meet millionaire in-laws. Charles smiled. They're just people, Rebecca. Difficult, annoying people sometimes, but still just people. Says the millionaire. Says your husband, Charles corrected gently. Rebecca looked at him over her mug. In the firelight, with his guard down and his expression open, Charles looked younger than his 32 years. Vulnerable even. This is going to be strange for a while, she said. Probably. Charles didn't deny it. But strange doesn't mean bad. Give it time. Give us time. Rebecca nodded slowly. She wasn't sure what would grow from this arrangement, but she was beginning to think it might be more than just a business deal. Outside, an owl called from the forest. The fire crackled. And 2 people who had married as strangers sat together in comfortable silence, beginning the slow process of becoming something more. The next week passed in a blur of adjustment and surprises. True to his word, Charles drove Rebecca back to town to collect their belongings from the old apartment. The landlord had been understanding when Rebecca explained she was moving out early, especially after Charles quietly paid the remaining 3 months' rent as a courtesy. Packing up their small apartment took less time than Rebecca expected. They didn't own much: some clothes, books, a few kitchen items, photographs, and personal treasures. It all fit in the truck in one trip. "This is everything we had," Thomas said, looking at the half-full truck bed. "It looks like nothing." "It's not nothing," Charles replied. "These are the things that matter to you. That makes them valuable." Back at Winter's End, they unpacked slowly. Lily arranged her books on the shelf Charles had finished for her, running her hands over the smooth wood with wonder. Thomas hung posters in his room and set up his small collection of model cars on the windowsill. Rebecca placed her mother's jewelry box on her dresser and her father's favorite photograph on the nightstand. Patricia helped them settle in with quiet efficiency. She showed them where things were kept, how the various appliances worked, and which rooms they could consider their own spaces. "The library is open to everyone," Patricia explained. "Charles loves when people read his books. The media room has movies and games. The kitchen is always open if you're hungry. Think of this as your home, not a museum." "How many people work here?" Rebecca asked. The estate seemed too big for just Patricia to manage alone. "Just me full-time," Patricia replied. "A gardener comes twice a week and a cleaning service comes monthly for deep cleaning. But mostly it's just me keeping things running." She smiled. "Charles doesn't like a lot of people around. He values privacy." As the days passed, they developed a routine. Charles ran every morning while Rebecca got the kids ready for the day. Patricia made breakfast for everyone. Thomas and Lily had enrolled in the local school about 20 minutes away, a small building with good teachers and smaller classes than their old school. Rebecca spent her days exploring the property, helping Patricia with household tasks, and beginning to paint again. Charles had set up a small studio for her in a sunlit corner of the guest house, complete with easels, paints, and a comfortable chair. "I haven't painted in 5 years, Rebecca had protested when he showed it to her. "Then it's time to start again," Charles had replied simply. She started with simple subjects: the stream, wildflowers, the way light hit the valley at sunset. Her hands remembered the movements and her eye for color came back quickly. It felt like reclaiming a part of herself she'd thought was gone forever. Charles worked on various projects around the property. He fixed a fence line, repaired a section of the stable roof, and continued his woodworking in the workshop. Sometimes Rebecca would find him there, covered in sawdust, completely focused on whatever he was creating. "What are you making now?" she asked one afternoon. "A chess table for Thomas," Charles replied, showing her the intricate inlay work. "He mentioned he used to play with your dad. Thought they might enjoy having a nice set for when your father comes home." Rebecca felt that warmth in her chest again, the one that appeared whenever Charles did something unexpectedly thoughtful. "You're good at this. The woodworking. It's peaceful. I can think while I work." Charles sanded a piece of wood smooth. "When I was in the business world, my mind was always racing. Deals and strategies and politics. Out here working with my hands, everything slows down." They talked while Charles worked, conversations that ranged from silly to serious. Rebecca learned that Charles was afraid of heights, loved old Western movies, and had once tried to learn guitar but gave up after 3 weeks. Charles learned that Rebecca could do math in her head faster than most people with calculators, had never left the state, and secretly wanted to learn how to ride horses. "I can teach you," Charles offered. "Daisy is perfect for beginners. Patient and steady." "Maybe," Rebecca said, though the idea scared her a little. Evenings became family time. They ate dinner together at the big kitchen table, sharing stories about their days. Thomas talked about his new friends at school. Lily described the school library, which was apparently the best thing she'd ever seen. Charles and Rebecca added their own observations, building a sense of normalcy in their unusual situation. After dinner, they'd often gather in the library. Charles taught Thomas to play chess on a simpler set while the fancy table was being built. Rebecca read with Lily, working through books the girl had checked out from school. Patricia would join them sometimes, knitting in a corner chair while everyone relaxed. "This is nice," Lily said one evening, curled up next to Rebecca with a book. "I like it here." "Me too," Thomas admitted from across the room where he was losing to Charles at chess. "Even if Charles keeps beating me." "I'm going easy on you," Charles replied with a grin. "Give it a few more weeks and you'll start winning." Rebecca looked around the room at her makeshift family. A month ago, she'd been desperate and afraid, watching her father die and her family fall apart. Now they were safe and warm in a house that felt increasingly like home. That night, Charles knocked on the connecting door between their rooms. Can we talk? They sat by the fireplace again, something that had become their habit for private conversations. I need to tell my family about you, Charles said. I've been putting it off, but they're getting suspicious. My mother called 3 times this week. Rebecca's stomach tightened. What will you tell them? The truth. That I'm married. That my wife and her family are living here with me. That I'm happy. Charles looked at her seriously. They're going to want to meet you. Probably sooner rather than later. I don't know how to act around people like that. Act like yourself, Charles said. That's all you need to do. You're smart, kind, and genuine. Those are things my family doesn't encounter often in their world. What if they hate me? Then they hate me too because we're a package deal. Charles reached over and took her hand. Rebecca, I need you to know something. This started as a practical arrangement, but you and your family have become important to me. I'm not going to let anyone make you feel small or unwelcome. You belong here. Rebecca squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses from his woodworking. Thank you. I'm calling them tomorrow, Charles decided. Getting it over with. Elena already knows. She's excited to meet you. At least one person in your family might like me. Charles smiled. Elena will love you. She's been waiting years for me to find someone real. The next morning, Rebecca was in her makeshift studio when she heard raised voices from the main house. She put down her paintbrush and walked back, finding Charles in his office with the door open. He was on the phone and his expression was tense. No, Mother. I'm not discussing this further. I'm married. That's final. He paused, listening. Her name is Rebecca. We're living at Winter's End. And no, you can't just show up unannounced. Rebecca hesitated in the doorway. Charles saw her and gestured for her to come in. Mother, I have to go. We'll arrange a proper meeting when Rebecca is ready. Until then, respect our privacy. He hung up without waiting for a response. That didn't sound good, Rebecca said. My mother doesn't do well with not getting her way. Charles ran a hand through his hair. She's demanding to meet you immediately. Wants to fly out this weekend. This weekend? That's in 3 days. I told her no. We'll do it when we're ready, not when she demands it. Charles stood and walked to the window. I'm sorry. I hope they'd be more understanding. Rebecca moved to stand beside him. Charles, we can't avoid them forever. Maybe it's better to just get it over with. You don't have to do this yet. Maybe I do. Rebecca took a breath. They're your family. Eventually we have to face them. Might as well be on our terms in our home. Charles looked at her with something like admiration. You're braver than you think. I'm terrified, Rebecca corrected. But I'm also tired of being afraid. Your mother wants to meet me? Fine. Let her come. Let her see that you married a normal person who makes you happy. What's she going to do about it? A smile spread across Charles's face. When you put it that way, it doesn't sound so bad. Call her back. Tell her she can visit next weekend. That gives me a week to prepare. Charles pulled out his phone, then paused. Are you sure? No, Rebecca admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He made the call, and Rebecca listened as he arranged for his parents to visit the following Saturday. When he hung up, he looked at her with mixed emotions. They're coming. Both of them. Saturday afternoon. Then we better get ready, Rebecca said with more confidence than she felt. As they left the office together, Rebecca thought about what was coming. Meeting Charles's parents would be a test, she knew. They'd judge her, question her, probably try to find fault with the marriage. But she had a week to prepare. A week to remember that she was Charles's wife, not some intruder. A week to get ready to stand her ground. She just hoped a week would be enough. The week before Charles's parents' visit became a strange combination of normal life and preparation. Rebecca found herself paying attention to things that had never mattered before. How she dressed, how she spoke, how she acted at meals. Charles noticed and called her out on it. Stop overthinking, he said over breakfast 3 days before the visit. My parents don't get to change who you are. Easy for you to say, Rebecca replied, pushing eggs around her plate. You grew up in that world. I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb. Thomas looked up from his cereal. What's a sore thumb got to do with anything? It's an expression, Lily explained with the confidence of someone who'd recently learned something new. It means standing out obviously. Thanks for that, Rebecca muttered. Charles reached across the table and took Rebecca's hand. Listen to me. You're smart, accomplished, and brave. You've kept a family together through impossible circumstances. My parents have spent their whole lives surrounded by people who only want something from them. They need to meet someone real. I'm not accomplished. I stock shelves at a grocery store. You raised 2 kids while caring for a sick father. You made sure everyone ate and had clothes and stayed in school. You sacrificed your dreams so they could have a chance at theirs. Charles squeezed her hand. That's more accomplished than most people with fancy degrees. Patricia set down a fresh pot of coffee. He's right. And for what it's worth, I've known Charles's parents for 30 years. They're not monsters. They're just people who forgot how to see past money. That afternoon, Rebecca was in her studio working on a painting when Elena called. Charles had given his sister Rebecca's number, and they'd texted a few times but hadn't spoken directly yet. Rebecca? It's Elena Winters, Charles's sister. Hi, Rebecca said, setting down her brush. Charles has told me about you. All good things, I hope. Elena's voice was warm and friendly. Listen, I heard Mom and Dad are coming to visit. I wanted to reach out, offer some moral support. I appreciate that. I'm kind of terrified. Don't be. Well, be a little scared. They can be intense. But they're not going to eat you alive. Elena laughed. Probably. That's reassuring. Seriously though, I want you to know something. Charles has never brought anyone home before. Never introduced a girlfriend to the family, never even mentioned being serious with someone. The fact that he married you tells me everything I need to know. You're important to him. Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest. He's become important to me too. Good. Because my brother has spent too long alone, pretending that isolation was the same as independence. Elena's tone grew more serious. I know your marriage started as an arrangement. Charles told me. But I've talked to him 3 times since you moved in and he sounds different. Happier. Lighter. That's because of you. I think it's because of the valley. This place is peaceful. It's not the valley, Elena said firmly. It's you and your family. You've given him something to care about beyond himself. That matters. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Elena offering advice about handling their parents and sharing stories about growing up with Charles. By the time they hung up, Rebecca felt like she'd made a friend. The days passed quickly. Charles took Rebecca riding on Daisy, the gentle mare who plodded along the valley trails with patience. Rebecca discovered she loved being on horseback, seeing the property from a different height. They rode to the waterfall Lily had seen in photographs, a beautiful cascade of water into a clear pool. I used to swim here as a kid, Charles said, dismounting to let Daisy drink. The water's freezing even in summer, but it felt like my private paradise. Rebecca slid off Daisy carefully, her legs a bit wobbly from the ride. Did you bring friends here? Never had many friends worth bringing. Charles skipped a stone across the pool. I was always the rich kid. People either hated me for it or wanted to use me. Hard to trust anyone. Is that why you left? Part of it. I wanted to find out who I was when nobody knew about the money. Turns out I'm just a guy who likes fixing things and working with his hands. He smiled at her. And apparently, I'm a guy who can find an amazing wife in a hospital hallway at 3 in the morning. Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. You didn't know I was amazing when you proposed. I knew you were brave. That was enough. They rode back slowly and Rebecca realized she was enjoying herself. Actually happy. When had that happened? When had this strange arrangement started feeling like a real life? That evening they were finishing dinner when Thomas brought up his school's upcoming fair. They want parents to volunteer at booths, he said casually. I signed you guys up for the ring toss. Rebecca nearly choked on her water. You what? You and Charles. They needed more parent volunteers. I figured you wouldn't mind. Charles and Rebecca looked at each other. They hadn't really been out in public together as a married couple yet. This would be their first appearance as a family unit. When is it? Charles asked. 2 weeks from Saturday. We'll be there, Charles said before Rebecca could panic. He looked at her. It'll be fun. Rebecca wanted to argue, but Thomas and Lily were watching hopefully. Okay, sure. Ring toss. Patricia hid a smile behind her coffee mug. Later, as Rebecca and Charles sat by the fireplace in their usual spot, Rebecca finally voiced what had been building in her mind. This is becoming real, she said quietly. This family. It started as a deal, but it's turning into something else. Charles nodded slowly. I've noticed that too. Does that scare you? A little, he admitted. I didn't expect to care about you this much. I thought it would stay practical and friendly. But somewhere along the way you became someone I look forward to seeing every day. Someone whose opinion matters. Someone I trust. Rebecca's heart beat faster. I feel the same way. You're not just the person who saved my family anymore. She struggled for words. You're important. Important, Charles repeated with a small smile. That's a very safe word. I'm not ready for unsafe words yet. That's okay. Charles reached over and took her hand, something he'd been doing more often lately. We have time. No rush. Let's just see where this goes naturally. Rebecca nodded, feeling relieved and disappointed at the same time. Part of her wanted to rush forward, to define whatever was growing between them. But another part appreciated Charles's patience, his willingness to let things develop without pressure. Your parents are going to ask about us, Rebecca said. About our relationship. What should I tell them? Tell them we're partners. Tell them we're building a life together. Tell them whatever feels true to you. Charles squeezed her hand. Don't lie for their benefit. They'll respect honesty more than performance. I hope you're right. Friday morning, the day before the visit, Rebecca stood in front of her closet in mild panic. Everything she owned seemed too casual or too worn for meeting wealthy in-laws. A knock came at her bedroom door. Patricia entered carrying several garment bags. Charles said you might need these, Patricia explained, hanging the bags in Rebecca's closet. He had a personal shopper send some options. Try them on, keep what you like, send back what you don't. Rebecca unzipped the first bag to reveal a beautiful blue dress. Simple but elegant. She tried it on and found it fit perfectly. The other bags held more dresses, slacks, nice tops, all in styles that looked good without being flashy. How did he know my size? Rebecca asked. Patricia smiled. Charles is observant. He notices things. That evening, Rebecca wore the blue dress to dinner. Charles's eyes lit up when he saw her. You look beautiful, he said. The dress is perfect. Thank you. I figured you might stress about what to wear. This way you have options. Charles pulled out her chair at the dinner table. But Rebecca, you'd look fine in jeans and a t-shirt too. Don't change who you are for them. Lily tugged on Rebecca's dress. You look like a princess. More like a person going to meet her in-laws, Rebecca corrected, but she smiled. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept imagining different scenarios for the next day, each one worse than the last. Around midnight, she heard movement in Charles's room. A moment later, a soft knock came at the connecting door. Can't sleep either? Charles asked when she opened it. Too nervous. Come on. He gestured for her to follow him. They walked through the quiet house and out onto the back patio. The night was clear and warm, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. They sat on the outdoor furniture, listening to crickets and the distant sound of the stream. When I was a kid and couldn't sleep, my grandfather would bring me out here, Charles said. He'd point out constellations and tell me stories about ancient heroes. Made everything seem less scary. Did it work? Usually. He had a way of making problems feel smaller. Charles looked up at the stars. He used to say that anything that seemed huge today would be just one more star in the sky eventually. Part of a bigger pattern. Rebecca leaned back, following his gaze. Your grandfather sounds wise. He was the best person I knew. When he died, he left me this place. My parents wanted to sell it, use the money for business expansion. But the will was clear. It was mine to do with as I wanted. Charles smiled at the memory. I think he knew I'd need somewhere to run to eventually. I'm glad you kept it. Me too. Charles turned to look at her. Tomorrow's going to be fine, Rebecca. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this. Promise. Promise. They sat under the stars for another hour, talking about everything and nothing. Eventually, Rebecca's nervousness faded into simple tiredness. When they went back inside, Charles walked her to her room. At her door, he paused. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For giving this a chance. For trusting me. For becoming someone I can trust back. He smiled. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Charles. Rebecca went to bed feeling calmer than she had all week. Whatever tomorrow brought, she wouldn't face it alone. And somehow that made all the difference. Saturday arrived with perfect weather. Sunshine, light breeze, temperature in the mid-70s. Rebecca wished for rain, storms, anything that might delay the inevitable meeting with Charles's parents. She dressed carefully in one of the new outfits, a simple navy dress with comfortable shoes. Patricia had made a special brunch, and the house had been cleaned until it sparkled. Thomas and Lily wore their best clothes, looking uncomfortable but determined to make a good impression. They're just people, Charles reminded everyone for the 10th time. Difficult people sometimes, but still just people. Rich people, Thomas muttered. Wealthy people are still people, Charles corrected. The money doesn't change that. A car appeared at the top of the valley road around 1 o'clock. Charles had given his parents the gate code. Rebecca watched through the window as a luxury sedan made its way down toward the house. "Here we go," she whispered. Charles came to stand beside her, placing a hand on her back. "Remember, we're a team." The car parked in the circular driveway. The driver's door opened and a man in his 60s stepped out. He was tall like Charles, with silver hair and an expensive suit that probably cost more than Rebecca's car. Charles's father. The passenger door opened and a woman emerged. She was elegant in a way Rebecca had only seen in magazines. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, designer clothes that looked casual but probably cost thousands. Charles's mother. "Showtime," Charles murmured, and they went to greet his parents. "Charles," his father said, shaking his son's hand formally. "You're looking well." "Dad." "Mom." Charles gestured to Rebecca. "This is my wife, Rebecca." His mother's sharp eyes assessed Rebecca in one quick sweep. "Rebecca. How lovely to finally meet you. Mrs. Winters. Mr. Winters. Thank you for coming." Rebecca shook their hands, trying not to feel intimidated. "Please call me Margaret," Charles's mother said, though her tone didn't sound particularly warm. "And this is Richard." Charles's father nodded politely. "Quite a place you've maintained here, Charles. Your grandfather would be pleased." They moved inside and Margaret's eyes catalogued everything. Rebecca could almost see her calculating the value of the furniture, the art, the careful restoration work Charles had done. Patricia served tea in the formal sitting room. Thomas and Lily sat stiffly on a sofa, looking like they wanted to disappear. "So, Rebecca," Margaret began, stirring sugar into her tea with precise movements. "Charles tells us you met in town. How romantic." "We met at the hospital," Rebecca replied, deciding honesty was better than dancing around facts. "My father was ill and Charles offered to help." "How charitable of him." Margaret's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And you accepted his help by agreeing to marry him?" "Mother," Charles said warningly. "I'm simply trying to understand the situation," Margaret replied smoothly. "It's all been rather sudden. One day Charles is living alone, avoiding all family responsibilities. The next, he calls to announce he's married to someone we've never heard of." Rebecca felt her spine straighten. "Mrs. Winters, I understand this must seem strange to you. But Charles and I entered into our marriage with honesty and clear intentions. We're building a partnership based on mutual respect." "A partnership," Richard repeated. "Is that what we're calling marriages now?" "That's what good marriages have always been," Rebecca replied, keeping her voice level. "Two people working together toward common goals." Margaret set down her teacup. "And what are your common goals, dear? Besides accessing my son's considerable resources?" The room went silent. Lily's eyes went wide. Thomas looked ready to fight. Charles's jaw tightened. "That's enough," Charles said coldly. "Rebecca is my wife. You will treat her with respect or this visit ends now." "Charles, don't be dramatic," Margaret sighed. "I'm simply being realistic. You barely know this girl. She comes from nothing, has no connections, no education beyond high school. You've tied yourself to someone who can't possibly understand your world." Rebecca felt like she'd been slapped, but she refused to show it. "You're right, Mrs. Winters. I don't understand your world. I've never had money or connections. I've had to work for everything I have. But I understand people. I understand kindness and honesty and taking care of the people you love. Charles left your world because it didn't make him happy. Maybe that should tell you something." Margaret's expression hardened. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Rebecca stood, surprising everyone. "I know Charles is the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. I know he works with his hands because it makes him feel useful. I know. He runs every morning and makes bad coffee and is teaching my brother to play chess. I know him as a person, not as a bank account. Can you say the same?" "How dare you?" Margaret started, but Richard held up a hand. "She has a point, Margaret," he said quietly. "We've spent years trying to mold Charles into what we wanted instead of accepting who he is." Margaret turned on her husband. "Don't tell me you're taking her side." "I'm taking our son's side," Richard replied. He looked at Charles. "I can see she makes you happy. That should matter more than we've let it." "Thank you, Dad," Charles said, clearly surprised. But Margaret wasn't done. She stood, gathering her purse. "This is ridiculous. Charles, I'm giving you 1 month to end this farce of a marriage. Come back to Denver, take your place in the company, and marry someone suitable. Otherwise the family will cut you off completely. No more trust fund, no more company shares, nothing." "I don't want your money," Charles replied calmly. "I never have. That's the whole point. You say that now, but you'll change your mind when the bills come due. Margaret looked around the room. This place costs a fortune to maintain. Where will you get that money without family support? I have my own investments, Charles said. Grandfather left me more than just this property. I've been financially independent for years. I just never told you because I knew you'd try to control that too. Margaret's face flushed with anger. Fine. Ruin your life with this nobody. But don't come crawling back when it all falls apart. She strode toward the door, but Richard didn't follow immediately. He looked at Charles, then at Rebecca. Take care of him, he said simply. He's happier than I've seen him in years. That's worth more than business deals and social connections. I will, Rebecca promised. Richard nodded and left to follow his wife. The sound of their car starting up carried through the house, followed by the crunch of tires on gravel as they drove away. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Lily jumped up and hugged Rebecca. That was amazing. You told her off. I probably shouldn't have, Rebecca said, suddenly shaking. No, Charles said firmly. He crossed the room and pulled Rebecca into his arms. You stood up for yourself and for us. That took courage. Thomas grinned. She called you a nobody and you basically said that's better than being whatever she is. That was awesome. Patricia appeared in the doorway. Well, that was eventful. Anyone want actual lunch? I made pot roast. The tension broke and everyone laughed. They moved to the kitchen, where Patricia had indeed prepared a feast. As they ate, the conversation turned lighter. They talked about school, about the upcoming fair, about Thomas's improving chess game. But later, after the kids had gone to their rooms and Patricia had retired for the evening, Rebecca and Charles sat in their usual spot by the fireplace. I'm sorry, Rebecca said. I made things worse with your family. You made things honest, Charles corrected. My mother needed to hear that I'm happy. That money isn't everything. That I found something real. He took her hand. She'll come around eventually. And if she doesn't, that's her loss. She threatened to cut you off. She was bluffing. And even if she wasn't, I meant what I said. I don't need their money. I have everything I need right here. Rebecca looked at him, seeing sincerity in his eyes. When did this become more than a business arrangement for you? Charles thought about it. Probably the first time you laughed at one of my jokes. Or maybe when you tried to learn to ride Daisy and refused to give up even though you were scared. Or possibly when you stood in this very room and told me you wanted to start painting again. He smiled. There wasn't one moment. It was a lot of small moments that added up. It's been adding up for me too, Rebecca admitted. I think I've been falling for you slowly without meaning to. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It wasn't part of the plan. Plans change, Charles said softly. He leaned closer. Is it okay if I kiss you? Rebecca's heart raced. Yes. Their first kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise rather than passion. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. That was nice, Rebecca said. Very nice. Charles kept his arm around her shoulders. We should do that again sometime. Maybe we should. They sat together watching the fire burn down to embers. Outside, the valley was quiet and peaceful. Inside, two people who had started as strangers were becoming something real. Rebecca knew challenges would come. Charles's mother wouldn't give up easily. There would be more confrontations, more attempts to break them apart. But sitting here with Charles, feeling safe and cared for, Rebecca thought they might be strong enough to face whatever came next. Together. 3 months had passed since the disastrous visit from Charles's parents. 3 months of building a life together, of small moments and gradual changes. The valley had transformed from overwhelming to comfortable, from foreign to familiar. Rebecca stood at her easel in the guest house studio, working on a large painting of the waterfall. Her technique had improved dramatically, hours of practice returning skills she'd thought were lost. Several finished paintings hung in the main house now, and Patricia had mentioned that Elena wanted to buy 2 for her apartment. The sound of the stream drifted through the open window. Outside, she could see Thomas and Charles fishing, Thomas laughing at something Charles said. Her brother had grown comfortable here, secure in a way he'd never been in their old life. His grades had improved, he'd made good friends at school, and he'd started talking about maybe becoming an engineer someday. Lily was in the main house library, buried in books as usual. Her teacher had pulled Rebecca aside last week to say that Lily was reading at a level 3 grades ahead. The security and stability had allowed her to excel. And their father was coming home today. Rebecca cleaned her brushes and walked back to the main house. Patricia was preparing a welcome dinner, and the smell of roasting chicken filled the kitchen. Nervous? Patricia asked, seeing Rebecca's expression. A little. It's been 3 months since he left for the rehabilitation center. What if he doesn't like it here? What if he thinks I made a mistake? He's going to see his daughter happy and his grandchildren thriving, Patricia replied. That's all any parent wants. A car appeared at the top of the ridge. Rebecca's heart jumped. Charles had driven to collect her father from the rehabilitation center, a 3-hour round trip. Thomas and Lily came running from different directions, both having been watching for the car. They clustered by the front door, bouncing with excitement. The car parked and Charles got out first. He opened the passenger door and Rebecca's father emerged. He looked better than she'd seen him in years. Stronger, healthier, color in his face. The cardiac rehabilitation had done exactly what Charles promised. Dad. Lily launched herself at him and he caught her with a laugh. Hey baby girl. Look at you. Have you grown? Thomas was next, more reserved but grinning. Hey Dad. Rebecca's father hugged him tight. Son. You taking care of your sisters? We're taking care of each other, Thomas replied, and Rebecca felt proud of his maturity. Then her father looked at her. Rebecca walked forward slowly, suddenly uncertain. But he opened his arms and she fell into them like she was 10 years old again. Thank you, he whispered in her ear. For saving me. For saving all of us. I had help, Rebecca replied, pulling back to look at Charles, who stood by the car looking pleased. Her father followed her gaze and walked over to Charles. For a moment, the two men just looked at each other. Then her father extended his hand. Thank you for taking care of my family, he said. I know this situation started in an unusual way, but I can see you're a good man. Charles shook his hand firmly. They're my family now too, sir. I'm happy to help. Call me Jack. None of this, sir, business. They went inside and Jack's eyes widened as he took in the house. This is where you've been living? It's a bit much, right? Rebecca said nervously. Jack searched for words. It's beautiful. All of this. The valley, the house, the space. These kids must love it here. We do. Lily confirmed. I have my own library, Dad. Well, not really my own, but Charles says I can read any book I want. And there's a stream with fish and horses and a waterfall. Jack laughed. Slow down, sweetheart. I want to hear everything, but let me catch my breath first. They gave him a tour of the house, Jack exclaiming over the various features. Patricia had prepared a room for him on the first floor, knowing stairs might still be difficult. It was spacious and comfortable, with its own bathroom and a view of the gardens. This is too much, Jack said, looking around his new room. I don't need all this space. You deserve it, Charles replied simply. After everything you've been through, you deserve comfort and peace. At dinner, Jack fit right into their family dynamic. He teased Thomas about his chess obsession and listened patiently to Lily's detailed description of her favorite books. He complimented Patricia's cooking and asked Charles about the property's history. Later, when the kids had gone upstairs and Patricia had retired, Jack sat with Rebecca and Charles in the library. I need to say something, Jack began, looking at his daughter. When you told me you were marrying Charles to save my life, I felt guilty. Like I'd forced you into something you didn't want. Dad, no. He held up a hand. Let me finish. I spent 3 months at that rehabilitation center thinking about this. About what you sacrificed. About this marriage. And I realized something. He looked at Charles. You didn't just save my life. You gave my daughter hers back. You gave my grandchildren stability and hope. You've been kinder to strangers than most people are to their own family. That's what decent people do, Charles said quietly. No, Jack disagreed. Decent people help a little. You transformed our entire lives. And watching you two tonight, the way you move around each other, the way you communicate without words, I can see this isn't just an arrangement anymore. You've fallen in love. Rebecca felt her face heat. She looked at Charles, who was looking back at her with an expression that made her heart race. We have, Charles confirmed, still looking at Rebecca. At least I have. Me too, Rebecca whispered. I think I've been in love with you for a while now. I was just scared to say it. Charles reached over and took her hand. I love you, Rebecca. Not because of any deal or arrangement. I love you because you're brave and kind and real. You make me want to be better. You make me happy. I love you too, Rebecca said, tears in her eyes. You saved my family, but you also saved me. You gave me space to be myself, to remember my dreams, to feel safe enough to trust someone again. Jack stood up with a smile. I'm going to leave you two alone. I have a feeling you have things to discuss. After he left, Rebecca and Charles moved to their usual spot by the fireplace. But tonight felt different. Tonight, everything had changed. So, Charles said, playing with her fingers. We love each other. Apparently so. Rebecca smiled. What do we do about it? I have an idea. Charles reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I bought this 2 months ago. Been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment. Rebecca's breath caught as he opened the box to reveal a ring. Not huge or ostentatious, but beautiful and perfect. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. Blue like the sky in summer, Charles said. Your favorite color. He slid off the couch to kneel in front of her. Rebecca Thompson Winters, will you marry me? I know we're already married, but that was for practical reasons. This time I'm asking for real. Will you be my wife not because of a deal, but because we love each other? Rebecca laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you for real. I'll marry you 1,000 times if you want. Charles slipped the ring onto her finger, next to the simple gold band from their courthouse wedding. Then he pulled her into a kiss that was deeper than their first, full of promise and passion and love. When should we do it? Rebecca asked when they came up for air. The second wedding? Whenever you want. We can have something small here in the valley, just family. Or we can wait, plan something bigger. Whatever makes you happy. Small sounds perfect. Here in the valley by the stream. With the people who matter. They spent the rest of the evening making plans, dreaming about their future. Charles wanted to expand the workshop, maybe start selling his furniture. Rebecca wanted to try selling her paintings, see if she could make a career of her art. They talked about eventually having kids of their own, about watching Thomas and Lily grow up, about growing old together in the valley. Around midnight they walked out onto the patio under the stars. The valley spread below them, peaceful and perfect. Do you ever regret it? Rebecca asked. That night in the hospital? Offering to marry a stranger? Never, Charles replied immediately. Best decision I ever made. You. Rebecca thought about it. Thought about where she'd been 3 months ago. Desperate, terrified, watching her world fall apart. And where she was now, safe, loved, part of a family that chose each other. No regrets, she said. Not a single one. Charles wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together watching the stars. Tomorrow they'd tell the kids about the second wedding. They'd call Elena, who would be thrilled. Eventually they'd even reach out to Charles's parents, offer them another chance to be part of the family. But tonight was just for them. 2 people who had met in the worst moment of their lives and turned it into the best thing that ever happened. I love you, Charles whispered against her hair. I love you too, Rebecca replied. And standing there under the stars in their hidden valley, Rebecca understood something profound. Sometimes the bravest choice you can make is accepting help. Sometimes strength means letting someone else be strong for you. And sometimes love grows best when you're not looking for it, when it develops naturally from kindness and trust and shared moments. Their story had started with desperation and necessity. But it was ending with love and hope and a future full of possibilities. 3 weeks later, on a perfect Saturday morning, they held their second wedding by the stream. Jack walked Rebecca down a path lined with wildflowers. Thomas stood as Charles's best man. Lily was maid of honor, taking her job very seriously. Patricia and Elena watched with tears in their eyes. The ceremony was simple and genuine. This time, when they said their vows, every word came from the heart. I promise to love you, Rebecca said, holding Charles's hands. To support you. To be your partner in building a life that makes us both happy. You saved my family, but more than that, you taught me how to trust again. I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that your faith in me was justified. I promise to love you, Charles replied. To respect you. To give you space to be yourself while always being there when you need me. You brought light into my isolated life. You made this valley feel like home. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes to me. When they kissed this time, it was as husband and wife in every sense. Not strangers making a deal, but partners choosing each other with full hearts and clear eyes. The reception was held in the main house, with Patricia's amazing food and Elena's carefully chosen music. They danced in the great room, laughed with family, and celebrated the strange, wonderful journey that had brought them together. As the sun set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Rebecca stood on the patio with her new family around her. Her father was healthy. Her siblings were happy and thriving. She had a husband who loved her and a life full of possibilities. What are you thinking? Charles asked, coming to stand beside her. That 3 months ago, I was in a hospital hallway thinking my life was over, Rebecca replied. And now I'm here with you in this beautiful place, and I'm happier than I ever imagined possible. Me too, Charles said. He took her hand, the sapphire ring catching the last rays of sunlight. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger." "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible," Rebecca replied. "For believing I was worth saving." "You were always worth saving," Charles said. "I just helped you see it." They kissed as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, leaving the valley in gentle twilight. Around them their family talked and laughed. Inside the house, lights came on one by one, making the mansion glow warmly. Rebecca Thompson Winters had started the year desperate and afraid, willing to do anything to save the people she loved. She'd married a stranger in a courthouse, moved to a hidden valley, and discovered that sometimes the scariest choices lead to the best outcomes. She'd found love in the most unexpected place. And she'd learned that home isn't where you start. It's where you choose to stay.